Welcome to Real Money Dramas. My name is Eric. I run a small landscaping business outside Denver. Just me, 2 trucks, and a list of steady clients. Last year, my parents called in a panic. The bank was about to take their house. My brother said he had a plan, but they needed time. I wired them $100,000 that same week. No questions, no contract. A month later, I stopped by the house. My brother was standing in the driveway. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "This isn't your house. Relax." That's when I realized I was never part of the family, just the funding. I've always known I was the backup son. Growing up, Trent was the favorite, the funny one, the charming one, the one who just needed time to figure it out. I was the one who mowed lawns in high school, worked night shifts in college, and skipped vacations to build something real. I didn't complain. I just kept my head down and kept working. When you're the responsible one, you don't expect thanks, but you do expect respect. So when my parents called that morning, I didn't hesitate. It was my mom's voice. Shaky. She didn't even say hello. Just, "It's happening. They're starting foreclosure." I asked what they needed. She didn't name a number. She just said, "Your brother's trying to pull something together. He's talking to people, but we're short on time." I called Trent that night. He picked up on the third ring. Said he had something in motion, but the process would take a few weeks. "I just need a little space to make it happen," he told me. "We're not asking for a handout." That same evening, I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water, stared at my laptop for about 5 minutes, then entered the wire details. $100,000. I hit send. I knew it was a risk, but they were my parents. I didn't want to insult them by asking for paperwork, just wanted to help before it was too late. There was no thank you call that night. No message, not even a text. A few days later, Mom sent a photo of their front porch with some potted plants and a vague caption. "Looks like we get to keep this view a little longer." That was it. I didn't expect a parade, but something about the silence sat wrong with me. Still, I told myself, maybe that's just how they are. Maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe they're just waiting for things to settle before reaching out. I went back to work, ran jobs, managed crews, filled invoices. On the surface, nothing had changed. But underneath, a question had started to crawl into my head. What happens when you finally do everything right and still don't belong? I didn't go to the house for a month. Not because I was waiting for an invitation. I didn't need one. It was the house I grew up in. The house I helped repair after Dad's back surgery. The house I used to mow every Saturday morning while Trent slept in. But still, I stayed away. I told myself they needed space, that they were probably busy sorting things out. I didn't want to come across as controlling or expectant. But a month later, I had a job in the area, just a 10-minute drive away. It felt wrong not to stop by, so I did. As I pulled into the cul-de-sac, I noticed something immediately. Construction materials stacked in the driveway. Plywood, insulation rolls, new siding. I thought maybe they were finally fixing the roof, which had been leaking for years. Then I saw Trent, shirt off, sunglasses on, standing near a wheelbarrow, talking to 2 guys in work boots. He turned, saw me, and smiled for a second. Then his face shifted, almost like he had to remind himself which version of me he was dealing with. I stepped out of the truck. He didn't say a word, just nodded. I asked, "What's going on?" He shrugged. "Fixing up the garage, turning it into a workspace. Gonna launch something small from here." I asked where the money was coming from. He said it was his project, said some investors had fronted a bit of seed money. I stood there, waiting. I thought someone would explain. Invite me inside. Offer me water. Nothing. Finally, I asked, "Did Mom and Dad know you were doing this?" He said, "Of course. It was my idea." I walked toward the porch. The door opened. Mom stepped out with a dish towel in her hand, like she'd been watching through the window. She looked at me, a little surprised, maybe a little annoyed. I said, "Hey, thought I'd drop by." She said, "You should have called. It's a bad time." I asked about the renovation. She wiped her hands and said, "It's Trent's thing. He's making the space useful. That's a good thing, right?" I nodded, then said, "I just thought since I helped keep the house, maybe someone would have mentioned it." That's when her face hardened, like I'd crossed a line. She said, "Eric, you gave us money. You didn't buy in." Before I could respond, Trent cut in. "This isn't your house. Relax." That word hit different. Relax. like I was overreacting, like it wasn't personal. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there for another few seconds, then walked back to the truck. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the garage. It was the way they looked at me, like I was a guest who'd overstayed his welcome. As I pulled away, I realized something. That door behind me, it wasn't just closed. It had been locked a long time ago. I just hadn't noticed. I didn't talk to them after that day. Not my parents. Not Trent. Not even a text. I told myself it was just pride. That maybe I needed a couple days to cool off. But days turned into weeks. Then a full month. And nothing. I thought about calling. About asking what the hell had happened. But I already knew what they'd say. Or worse, what they wouldn't. No call. No thank you again. No explanation. It would have been easier if they'd just said what they meant. Thanks for the money. Now leave us alone. But they didn't say anything. Just silence. Cold and intentional. I kept working. Filled my schedule. Focused on backyards, mulch orders, irrigation lines. Manual things. Things with results. But I'd catch myself in the middle of a job, standing there, shovel in hand, replaying that scene in the driveway. Over and over. The look on Trent's face. The way my mom folded that towel. The way she didn't hug me. Didn't even smile. It made me question everything. Not just that day, everything before it. Every Thanksgiving. Every Christmas. Every time they said, "We're proud of you, Eric," while Trent stumbled into the kitchen with another idea that never went anywhere. For the first time in my life, I realized I was never their guy. I was the insurance policy, the fallback, the safe one, the one they'd call in a crisis and forget once it passed. And that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was how normal it felt. Like I'd seen this coming, just didn't want to believe it. One Friday night, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. Female voice. Calm, a little rough around the edges. Said, "Hi Eric, it's your Aunt Laura. I heard what happened. I know we haven't talked in a long time, but I've been where you are. If you're open to it, I'd like to see you." Aunt Laura. I hadn't heard that name in 15 years. Last time we spoke, I was still in high school. She and my mom had a falling out, something about money. I never knew the full story. Just that one day she stopped coming to family events, and no one explained why. I listened to the message again, then again. Something about her tone, quiet but steady, got to me. I didn't call her back right away, but I didn't delete the message either. The next day, I asked myself, if someone shows up after 15 years and says, "I understand," maybe they do. So I called. She picked up right away. No hesitation. No small talk. She said, "I know what they did. I gave the money too, Eric. Not as much, but it was everything I had, and I never saw it again. Or them." Then she paused. "I have a place in New Mexico. Just a small vineyard. I run it alone now. If you ever want to see it, or just talk, come down." I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something shift. Someone had called me by name. And meant it. I drove down 2 weeks later. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't post about it. Didn't even pack much. Just a duffel bag, some tools, and a cooler full of sandwiches and water. The drive took almost 9 hours. I remember watching the landscape shift mile by mile. City to prairie, then prairie to desert. The farther I got, the lighter my chest felt. When I finally pulled into her property, the sun was low. A long gravel driveway opened into a quiet clearing. Rows of vines on one side, an old stucco house on the other. It wasn't much, but it was lived in. Real. Aunt Laura came out onto the porch. She hadn't aged the way I expected, still sharp-eyed, lean, pulled together. No drama in her voice, no apology. She just said, "You made it," and opened the screen door. Inside was simple, no fancy furniture, no clutter. Just a wooden table, a few chairs, some jars labeled by hand, and a strong smell of something fermenting in the back room. She poured 2 glasses of water and slid one across the table. Then she got to it. She told me how 20 years ago, when she sold her first small condo, she loaned most of it to my parents. Said it was for an expansion Dad was planning, some business thing that never happened. They never paid her back. And once she pushed, things got ugly. They didn't argue, she said. They vanished. That hit hard, because it was the same pattern, gratitude for the money, then distance. Like the second you helped them, you became inconvenient. She said she left Colorado after that. Bought the vineyard from a retired couple who'd lost interest. Said she knew nothing about grapes, but figured she'd learn. And she did. Alone. I asked her why now. She didn't pause. Because someone finally told me what they did to you. I didn't ask who. I didn't need to know. All I knew was she understood and wasn't here to fix me. Just offer a chair, a place to breathe, and something to do with my hands. That night, I slept in a small guest room with a fan that clicked every 4 seconds and a mattress that felt like plywood. But I slept. The first real sleep in weeks. In the morning, I woke up before sunrise. She was already outside, checking the rows. No speech, no list, no pressure. Just a quiet glance and a nod toward the vines. That was my invitation. I grabbed gloves from the back of my truck and followed her down the row. I didn't know the first thing about soil, fermentation, or harvesting schedules. But I knew work. I knew how to sweat. I knew how to keep going when things didn't feel fair. And out there, under the early light, something in me clicked. Not in a movie way. Not in some grand moment of healing. Just a slow, steady feeling that maybe I could build something again. This time, without waiting for anyone's permission. Working the vineyard wasn't romantic. It wasn't wine glasses on porches or slow sunsets with jazz playing. It was dirt under your nails, cracked fingertips, endless bending, and sweat that never seemed to dry. But I liked it. I liked how physical it was. How it made my back ache in a way that felt earned. I liked how nothing pretended to be more than it was. A vine was a vine. A bad row was a bad row. There were no false smiles, no quiet judgments behind kitchen curtains. Every morning, Aunt Laura would hand me a small list, handwritten, folded once. Just 3 or 4 tasks: trimming, tying, clearing weeds. Some days I'd finish by noon. Other days I'd barely make a dent. But no one ever asked for more than I could give. It was the first time I'd worked without looking over my shoulder. After 2 weeks, I stopped counting the days. My body adjusted. I stopped waking up angry. The nights got quieter. My appetite came back. One afternoon, Laura called me inside. There was a small table by the kitchen window with an open notebook, some receipts, and a laptop that looked 10 years old. She said, "If you want to stay longer, we could try making something out of this." I asked what she meant. She told me the vineyard had never been profitable. Not really. It covered her costs, but just barely. She never marketed. No website. No real packaging. Just sold bottles to locals who knew where to knock. She said, "You've got more structure in you than I do. If you want, we can make this a real thing, but only if you actually want it." I didn't answer right away. Not because I wasn't sure, but because I was surprised anyone would ask me first. That night, I sat outside with a beer and looked at the vines. Dry air. Stars. The smell of dirt and bark and something faintly sweet from the cellar. And I thought, maybe this is the kind of risk I actually want to take. Not to prove anything. Not to earn someone's respect. Just to see what I can build with someone who doesn't expect me to fix everything for them. The next morning, we got to work. Laura handled the soil, the crop rotation, the flavor profiles. I took photos, bought a domain name, built a basic site from scratch. I set up a small online store, bought labels, drafted a basic logo. Nothing flashy, just clean and honest. But the doubts didn't disappear. A few weeks in, we had a shipment get delayed and lose half a batch to heat. Another time, a supplier doubled their prices without warning. And more than once, I caught myself wondering what the hell I was doing trying to sell wine when I'd spent my whole life mowing lawns. I thought about going back, just packing up, heading home, pretending this was a break, not a shift. But then I'd walk the rows in the evening and see her still out there, checking leaves with a flashlight and an old clipboard. She wasn't doing this for show. She wasn't asking me to save her. She just showed up every day, same as me. That's when I realized I wasn't building someone else's dream this time. I was finally building mine. The first online order came in on a Wednesday. 1 bottle. Someone from Arizona. I checked the name 3 times. No one I knew. No one she knew. Just a stranger who saw a post, liked the label, and clicked buy. I printed the shipping label like it was gold. 2 days later, 4 more came in. Then 10. Then 30 in a week. I built a small mailing list. Wrote a few emails. Told our story. Short, plain, honest. No marketing tricks. Just what we were doing, why it mattered, and where we came from. People responded, not just with orders, with messages. One man wrote, "I left my job in finance last year. Bought a farm. Didn't know what I was doing either." A woman said, "I used to drive past your road on my way to school. Had no idea there was a vineyard out there." The money wasn't life-changing, but it came steady, enough to keep going. We reinvested every dollar, fixed the cooling unit, replaced the cracked barrels, ordered new corks in bulk. I built shelving in the back shed and rewired the old fridge so it could hold stock. For the first time in years, I stopped thinking about what I'd lost, the landscaping business, the money I'd wired, the version of family I thought I had. Instead, I started thinking about what I could keep. By year 2, we were stable. Not booming, but solid. We got picked up by a small boutique retailer in Santa Fe. They didn't ask for volume, just consistency and heart. And we had both. I remember walking back from the post office one day with 5 packages in hand. Sun on my neck, dust on my boots, no calls waiting, no tension in my chest. That was when I knew I wasn't leaving. Not for Denver, not for old clients, not even for closure. I had already closed the chapter, I just hadn't realized it. But closure has a way of knocking when you stop waiting for it. One evening, I opened my inbox and saw a name I hadn't seen in years. Trent. No subject line, no greeting, just a few lines. He wrote, "Starting something new. Just need a little push. Was wondering if you could float me a short-term loan. I've got something solid this time. Let me know." That was it. No apology. No mention of the house. No thanks for what I gave up so they could stay afloat. Just another ask. I sat there, staring at the screen, waiting to feel angry. But it didn't come. No heat. No pain. Just a quiet sense of recognition. Same pattern. Same play. Same ending. Only this time, I wasn't in it. I didn't reply right away. I went out to the shed, poured 2 small bottles, and packed the last 4 orders of the day. Then I came back in, found the old transfer receipt from 2 years ago, took a screenshot, and attached it to a blank reply. Underneath it, I typed one line. This was a one-time thing. Then I hit send. After I sent that message, I sat for a while. No rush of adrenaline. No second-guessing. I didn't wait for a reply, and I didn't need one. It was the first time I'd ever said no to Trent, and meant it. Not out of spite. Not because I wanted to get even. But because that version of me, the one who showed up with his checkbook and waited to be noticed, didn't live here anymore. Still, something in me stayed alert for a few days. Old habits. I kept checking the inbox, expecting a follow-up. Some argument. Some guilt trip. Maybe even something from my parents. But nothing came. Silence again. But this time, it didn't sting. It felt like space. And in that space, I saw everything more clearly. The money I sent? Gone. No repayment. No interest. No thanks. The business I left? Still running, probably. Or maybe not. I hadn't checked. Didn't want to. The family I thought I was trying to save? They were fine, just not with me in the picture. That was the truth I hadn't wanted to face. That maybe it was never about fixing the relationship. Maybe I just didn't want to admit how one-sided it had always been. And as much as that hurt, it was also a kind of relief. Letting go doesn't come with a loud snap. It's quieter than that. More like a door you stop pushing on. A few weeks later, I was reorganizing the cellar when Aunt Laura came down the stairs. She had a stack of shipping slips and a tired smile. She didn't say anything about the message I'd sent, but she paused and asked, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah, I actually think I am." She nodded once, like that was enough, and handed me the slips. After she went back upstairs, I stood there for a while, in the cool, dim quiet of the cellar, reading the names of people we'd never met, sending their addresses, choosing our wine. Every bottle that left the shelf felt like proof of something. Not that I'd moved on, but that I didn't need to go back. That week, we got an email from a small festival a few towns over. They wanted local vendors. Laura hesitated, said she wasn't good at crowds. I said I'd handle the table. We packed 3 crates in the truck and drove out before sunrise. Set up a folding table with a cloth and a few display bottles. Nothing fancy. People wandered by, asked questions, took samples. One woman bought 2 bottles and said, "It just tastes honest." And I thought, that's all I've ever wanted to be. Not impressive, not flashy, just real. We didn't sell out that day, but we sold enough. Enough to know we were doing something right, and enough to feel, for the first time, that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. About a month after that festival, a letter showed up. Not an email, not a text, an actual envelope. Handwritten, my name on the front in my mother's cursive. I held it for a long time before opening it. Part of me thought, maybe this is it. Maybe she's ready to talk. Maybe something shifted. I knew better. But hope doesn't always die clean. Sometimes it lingers like a bad habit. But I already knew better. The letter was short, barely a page. No real greeting, no warmth. Just a few tight sentences. She said she heard I was working with Laura, that she hoped I was well. Then one line that landed harder than the rest. I think it's time you stop holding on to past disappointments. No mention of the money. No mention of the visit. No mention of Trent. Just that, like all of it was somehow my burden to let go of. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the words, my hand gripping the edge of the paper tighter than I meant to. It was strange how one sentence could pull all the weight back. Just like that. And for a few minutes, I was right back there, standing in that driveway, listening to my brother's voice, hearing, relax, like it was me who had overstepped. But something had changed since then. Now, I had a life built on something solid. Not favors, not guilt, not the illusion of family. Just real choices, real work. Still, the letter got under my skin. Not because it hurt, but because it reminded me how deep the pattern ran. That no matter how far I'd come, part of me still wanted a version of them that didn't exist. I folded the letter, slipped it back in the envelope, and set it on the windowsill. Didn't respond. Didn't throw it away either. I went outside. Laura was in the garden, trimming back a few overgrown vines near the fence. I didn't bring it up. She didn't ask. But that evening, over dinner, she said something that landed differently. She said, "There's no prize for waiting to be understood." Then she took another bite, like it was nothing. But I felt it sit in my chest for hours after. Later that night, I stood out near the edge of the property where the land sloped down toward the old irrigation ditch. Wind came in from the west. Cold, steady. I thought about the house, about how many hours I'd spent trying to earn my place there, how many chances I gave them to see me. And I finally said it out loud, just once, just to myself. That's not my house. Not anymore. Then I turned around and walked back toward the lights of the kitchen, back toward the place where my name wasn't followed by an ask, a condition, or a silence. Just a chair at the table, and someone waiting on the other side of it. A few days later, a delivery truck pulled up to the vineyard. It wasn't our usual supplier, and we weren't expecting anything that week. The driver asked for me by name, then handed me a medium-sized box. No return address, no logo, just my name, handwritten across the top. Inside was a small wooden frame, wrapped in tissue paper. I unwrapped it on the kitchen counter. Laura stood nearby, drying her hands with a dish towel, quiet but watching. The frame held an old photo. It was our family, me, Trent, Mom and Dad, taken in the backyard of the house. I was maybe 15. Trent was in a cast. Someone must have snapped it during a cookout or a birthday. I hadn't seen that picture in years. Tucked behind the frame was a folded note. Not from my mother. Not signed. Just 5 words written in block letters. "You're still part of this." That was it. No explanation. No apology. No request. Just a line that tried to pull me back. I stared at the photo. At the version of myself who still believed that showing up was enough to be counted. I set the frame down on the table. Laura didn't say anything, but she raised her eyebrows, just slightly, as if to ask. I told her, I didn't send that photo, and I don't think it's for me. Later that evening, I wrapped it back up, took it out to the shed, and slid it into the top drawer of the old cabinet where we kept spare labels and bottle corks. Not because I was angry, but because I knew what that message meant. I knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't reaching out. They were roping in. That photo wasn't a welcome. It was a hook, bait dressed in memory. And the person I used to be would have taken it. I would have seen those faces, remembered the sound of the grill, the way Mom laughed when Trent made faces, and I would have thought, maybe they're finally seeing me. But now I saw it for what it was. A trap built out of old pictures and unfinished sentences. And the only thing worse than being shut out of that house was trying to crawl back into it. So I closed the drawer, turned off the shed light, walked back across the dirt path toward the main house where dinner was almost ready, where no one expected me to prove my worth before pulling up a chair, where no one needed a check to call me family. That night, I stood at the edge of the vineyard. The sun had dipped below the horizon, but the sky still held on to that thin band of orange, the kind that fades slow, like it doesn't want to leave just yet. The vines were quiet, the air cool. I could hear Laura inside, moving dishes, the soft clink of glass and ceramic. Nothing urgent, just the rhythm of a house that didn't expect anything from me but presence. I looked out across the rows we'd planted together, the dirt we'd turned, the barrels we'd filled, the shelves we'd built with our own hands. And I thought about the house in Denver, the driveway, the porch, the silence. I hadn't gone back. Not once. I hadn't driven by. I hadn't called. I hadn't checked the property records to see if they refinanced. None of it. The truth was, I didn't need to. Some doors don't close all at once. They seal in layers. Every unreturned call, every brushed-off gesture, every time you let yourself believe, next time, might be different. And then one day, you realize the lock was never on your side. So you stop rattling it. I still thought about them sometimes. That didn't disappear, but the ache had changed. It wasn't sharp anymore. Just a quiet reminder of how far I'd come from who I used to be. Someone who waited for approval like it was a paycheck. Who gave more than he had just to be asked to sit down. Now I built things that didn't need permission. We bottled a new batch that week. Laura said it was the best we'd made so far. Clean, balanced, strong. She handed me the first bottle off the line. "Keep it," she said, "for when the next chapter starts." I took it and nodded. Didn't ask what she meant. Some things don't need explaining. Later that night, I walked out to the shed and opened the top drawer, the one with the photo frame. I took it out, held it one last time, not to dwell, not to mourn, just to remind myself of how far I'd traveled, not in miles, but in decisions. Then I put it back in the drawer and closed it for good. No ceremony, no speech, just a quiet decision to keep walking forward. The next morning, we packed up crates for a regional tasting event. A bigger one. More people, more vendors. A chance to tell our story to strangers who didn't know what came before, just what was in front of them. And I was ready for that. Not as the man who once gave $100,000 to hold on to a family that never held him back, but as someone who finally understood what real belonging feels like. Not begged for, not bought, built. Thank you for watching till the end. Let's keep the story alive. Drop a comment below. And of course, subscribe for the next video.